Say it ain't so, Joe. Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk Podcast. Tom Curran alongside Phil Perry. We're going to get into the Joe Milton trade. Not just the fact that a second-year, sixth-round pick got sent to the Dallas Cowboys, but what the move and the timing of it says about the New England Patriots in totality. Here's Mike Vrabel from the owners' meetings earlier this week.
Yeah, I think Joe's did everything that they asked him to do last year. It sounds like in conversations that he worked extremely hard. And that's tough when you're a quarterback. Everybody wants to play. Everybody wants to be the starter. Everybody, and that's great to have that attitude. And he was ready for his opportunity there late in the season, which I commend him on. You know, where that leads to, we'll see as the draft approaches, or you know, where Joe is on April 7th to start our offseason program. But you know, you have to give Joe credit for being ready to go, going from the third quarterback to being able to win that football game and stay ready and stay hungry.
All right, Phil, it's been a hell of a week. We got a lot of intel from the owners' meetings. We've had access to coaches, but this move with Joe Milton is interesting because from what I've gleaned, the Patriots really just wanted to clear the decks for Drake May. Josh Dobbs is going to be the backup. And given Milton's performance, there seemed to be a sense that Joe believed the gap really wasn't that big between he and Drake May. So instead of having a guy who's like, man, I'm pretty good too here, just clear the decks. So that there is, I mean, Robert Kraft probably didn't help that at the end of the season, talking about the fact we might have two starting quarterbacks. Be that as it may, he gone. The fact that the Patriots did it before OTAs gives you yet another new broom sweeps clean move that they've made. I've also come to understand nobody made a true offer but the Cowboys, which is what Albert Breer reported. And this really punctures the notion that Joe Milton was going to glean a third-round pick or bring back glean. Stop saying glean. Bring back a third-round pick. Phil, your reaction to all of it. And don't talk about Eliot Wolf yet. We'll talk about that in a second.
So my reaction is, first of all, that seems like a low return. You know, we're talking about, I think even in terms of the realistic expectations for Joe Milton trade. I remember writing a story a few weeks ago now after having spoken to an executive with another team in the AFC about what a realistic return would be. And it was not a third. It was not a second. It was not some of these pie-in-the-sky thoughts that I know Patriots fans in some corners had. It was, can you improve it by a round? So if he's a sixth-round pick, can you get a fifth back? They got like one of the last fifth-round picks in this year's draft back, and they had to include a seventh as well. And so you didn't even improve on the value that Milton was originally given by the Patriots in terms of his draft slot from last year. In terms
of the point value.
Yeah. So the return is relatively low, but I think back to Vrabel's comment, Tom, when I hear you say Joe Milton didn't think the gap was all that big between he and Drake May. I immediately go back to Mike Vrabel saying at his opening press conference as head coach of the Patriots that he's going to rid entitlement from the building. That feels a little entitled. That feels like you don't know your role. And so it doesn't surprise me, given Vrabel's desire to have the kind of locker room culture that he wants, that they went ahead and made this move. I want to ask you a question really quickly, because when you say clear the decks for Drake May, people will hear that and assume this is something Drake May wanted. Do you believe that's the case?
No, I don't think that it's not what I gathered, from the limited conversations and information that I've gotten. Clear the decks so that there's no distractions. We've kind of been had this indicated to us from sources throughout the offseason, how vital it is that Drake May, on a really shitty team with a massively challenged offense, is not dealing with distractions. That was their goal. We can talk about Stephon Diggs not being the ideal guy in terms of an Eagle Scout and not an agitator, but don't cut off your nose to spite your face. Get some talent over there. You wanted to get the upshot is, Phil, they wanted his what's that word you use for something that's really clean?
Immaculate?
Sterile. I don't know. They want it as clean an environment as it possibly can be for Drake May to learn and excel without distraction. So that's why I feel that all of these moves, Phil, not all of these moves, but there may be more moves coming on the offensive side of the ball. We talked to Josh McDaniels, and we'll get into a little bit of that, but I can't imagine that Eliot Wolf right now is puffing his chest around and wandering about saying, hey, we made a good deal to get Milton out of here, huh? I mean, they've moved on from Milton. Jukes Okorafor played 12 snaps. Caden Wallace and Layden Robinson, they still don't have a left tackle. Javon Baker and Jalen Polk, one was the worst receiver in football statistically, and the other one had one catch all year, and he was a 4th-round pick. He's been a disaster, and the Patriots have moved on from guys like Devon Godshaw. They've moved on from guys like Jawan Bentley. They've moved on now from Milton. And there's a lot of indicators to me that this new regime is looking at Eliot and going, you might seem like a nice guy, or at least we're told to think you're a nice guy and helpful, but my God, what were you doing last year?
It's hard to look at last offseason and feel like, those moves panned out, whether it's in the draft outside of Drake May or in free agency, or the re-signings of guys that hadn't even gotten to free agency. So that part of Vrabel coming in and wanting to make the team his own, I think is really interesting, because we're already seeing, and I think we'll continue to see as we get through the spring, through the draft, into training camp, just how many of the moves that were made last year, Tom, become obsolete. Whether it's a 2nd-round pick on Jalen Polk, or it's, does Caden Wallace have a role on this team next year? Like things like that. I mean, there were real investments that were made across the board at different positions where I think you're looking for new guys. Layden Robinson's a 4th-round pick, and we don't talk about him a whole lot, and who knows, maybe he ends up being a starter for them. The Patriots were actively looking for more guard help, and it wasn't to replace Mike Owenu, who's making a lot of money. It was because they didn't feel like they had a starting caliber guard on the team. They don't feel great about it. Maybe they do, but they can't know that based on some of the names they were pursuing. So, at guard in the 4th round, I get it. There's no such thing as a sure thing as on day 3. But at that position, you take a player there, like that guy should be usable. And the fact that they're already looking to move on is a little bit alarming.
It's okay if you screw up if the other 4 guys you brought in are actually contributors. And I swear to God, we don't do enough of going back to the year before. Eliot Wolf had a role with that team. So does Bill Belichick. But City So went from a usable player to completely useless. Couldn't play. Antonio Mafi had to be released. Those are draft picks on the offensive line. So if I'm Eliot Wolf, I'm looking at, my God, every single guy that I was involved in bringing in is getting shipped out immediately before we even have our first OTA. I feel he's on a lot thinner ice than we imagine. This draft, Phil, has to go smooth and correct, because he has absolutely nothing on his resume that makes you think he should be closer to the war room than the Bass Pro Shop. He should be, don't just text Eliot if you have anything you want to know. Do not be in the room giving any advice at all, because everything you touch turns to bust.
You won't know how the draft goes, though, until the end of this coming season, right? I mean,
yeah, no,
unless the communication in the room itself. You should
be wary of his use. You should be wary of his involvement, because he's not good at what he's doing.
Doesn't it suggest, though, the fact that he's at the owners' meetings this year, Tom? It's the first time. He wasn't even at the owners' meetings last year, apparently. I was listening to him talk to Kay Adams, talk about how it's his first owners' meetings. He's at these press conferences. We're hearing from him quite a bit. He has been a very forward, we're hearing from him at the combine. He's been a very forward-facing person in the organization. And so I guess if he was on thin ice with ownership, Would he be doing all these things?
I still think that the fact that he was hired to be the general manager, has a contract giving him that responsibility, has stated when asked that, yeah, I'm the guy still. Probably not to puff his chest out about it, but just to say it's there. Because the Patriots don't want to pay a guy to not work, so they didn't fire him. And they also can't say he's not the general manager anymore and somebody else is, because to replace a general manager, you have to go through all the interview obligations relative to the Rooney Rule. So Felger had said he's probably just going to be running over to the fax machine and driving back and forth to the airport. Eliot said he didn't even know where the fax machine was. Okay, so he's not going to the fax machine. And maybe not going to the airport. But I bet he runs the Keurig pretty good.
Yeah, I would be surprised if he were to go. Because it to me, now you're veering on. I'm talking about ownership. You know, Mike Vrabel might at some point go to ownership and say, "Hey, it's not really working out," and they probably would heed his advice. But it's veering on embarrassment for ownership to continue to trot him out there and continue to throw your support behind him publicly, to then only let him go a few months later. That to me is it's
you're
hard.
Right.
It's a hard thing to go back on when you are as publicly defensive of the guy as they seem to have been.
I'd say chances are remote that he is going to be let go before the Patriots play games. But it has the whiff of a reassignment in early 2026, unless this is a fantastic draft and all the free agents that were brought in are just machines.
Well, and that's something that we've talked about before with, I thought Thomas Dimitroff was really good on that. You know, he was telling us at the Super Bowl this year, hard situation for Eliot. There are going to be times where, Ryan Cowden and Mike Vrabel are going to have a conversation and you're going to be sitting there wondering, what are those guys talking about? And why is Ryan Cowden here, Tom? If not to, he is a GM level person based on his experience. So he's going to uproot. He's uprooted a couple times now in the last couple of years, but he's going to uproot to come to New England just so he can be the number 2 for the foreseeable future. Maybe
to a guy who's got a horrendous resume so far built here.
And maybe he would say, yeah, I would. I that's how much I love and trust Mike Vrabel, and that's a good place for me and my family.
Hey, walks like a duck, talks like a duck, quacks, talks and quacks. It's a duck. There's just too much evidence indicating that the marginalization of Eliot Wolf, from Joe Milton to the players who've been moved on from him, released. Anyway, let's move on from that. Go to a rosier conversation, perhaps. Speaking of rosy, Josh McDaniels over the moon for the young quarterback Drake May.
I'm smitten by the young man in terms of just his personality. We've had an opportunity to spend some time that has nothing to do with football with one another, which I think, has been great, very beneficial and productive to get to know him, who he is, what he's all about, what he cares about, where he's coming from, his family, and Michael. I think next week and beyond will be super fun for me to really get to know him from a football perspective. I couldn't be more excited about the young man that we have.
Not just smitten, folks. Also looking to tweak the offense so that it fits his guys. Here's more Josh.
Every offensive system, defensive system has a language, so you have to decide the way you want to speak in terms of calling things and naming things. So our language has been refined a little bit. The language is how you talk. The strategy is all based about your players and what do we have, what are our strengths, how do we maximize the personnel that's on our team and on our offense. And that part is going to be different, like it is every year.
I heard Greg Bedard on BST last night, and he really likes the idea of McDaniels, but he's like, I don't know what they're going to do. I think it's going to be amazing. You might not see it in OTAs or training camp, but I think we're going to see some really special things from Josh. What do you think it's going to look like? just everybody lined up in one single file line behind center?
Ooh, didn't
Nobody's done
Michigan? Michigan did that, I think, a few years ago. They did something like that.
And just do leapfrog all the way down the field.
Yeah, the human centipede of offense.
Who's got it?
I don't know what it's going to look like for sure, but I think what we can say safely is that he is going to make what he feels is the best use of the weapons that he has, Drake May included. And I just feel strongly that he will do that, Tom, because we've seen him do it before. You know, they were really the first team to go spread in 2007 and changed everything. You know, they lit the league on fire with 2 tight ends. They won a Super Bowl with 2 backs a few years ago. They brought in a rookie. You know, they had Cam Newton. They brought in a rookie in 2021, and it went back to a lot of the sort of pocket passing, you know, read it out stuff that we saw with Tom Brady, but on a more limited scale. So he's got the ability to do a lot of different things. I would be fascinated to hear which teams he visited last year, college or pro. You know, he's talking about his year off, his year abroad, essentially, and just learning and you know, piecemeal picking things up here and there about where the modern game is going. And maybe we'll be able to tell in some respects where he visited based on what we see from their offense. Mm-hmm. But I trust that they have a really smart guy who knows how to use what he has at his disposal. So I do think, you know, I don't know, amazing. It's going to be great. It's going to be unbelievable. It's hard for us to say now, but I think whatever they have in terms of talent, like he's going to make the most of it. I do feel confident in saying that.
Right. Now, he is a perfectionist, a detail-oriented individual, and we've seen he gets pissed if things don't go correct. So I'm sure that he more sees the dark clouds on the horizon than saying, wait till I get a hold of Drake May in this offense. I mean, he loves May, but do you think that, you know, we talked Tuesday about Robert being so optimistic and Vrabel saying, tap the brakes. Do you think that Josh shares Mike Vrabel's hesitancy to get over his skis with expectations?
My guess is he knows just how much they lack in terms of talent. We got asked last night on Early Edition. It was Trenny, me, Mark Bertrand. You know, is Josh McDaniels going to be able to turn this offense around? And my initial reaction was just to say flatly no, because there's only so much that a coach can do. When I hear the words turn around, I'm thinking turn it into a contending offense, turn it from what it was at the bottom of the league and put it near the top. That's turning it around to me. I don't see that as much faith as I have in Josh McDaniels to be a good coordinator. If you don't have the groceries, you know, to make the proper meal, like, you're not going to be able to do it. I don't care who you are. So no, at this stage, I would imagine that he's looking at it and saying, yep, still don't have a left tackle, still don't have a number 1 receiver, not sure about the number 2 receiver. The right tackle's, you know, seems like a great guy, but he's 34. Like, you know, there's just a lot of questions pertaining to that offensive huddle.
Yeah, we got 2 31-year-old tight ends. We have a lead back who we pay a lot of money to, who decided to fumble more than anybody in the league last year. So there are a lot of things to look at and go, as you do the home inspection, how long is that going to hold up? What have we gleaned? Draft gleaned. I gleaned again. Oh my God. I typed it in the questions here. So let's ask it. Q7: what have we gleaned draft wise this week? Ty Warren ? Not the 2003 pick from A&M, but the tight end. Because I think that Josh looks at a Ty Warren, Hunter Henry, Austin Hooper room and goes, well, that could solve some problems.
I think you'd have some fun with that. You know, you come up with this just diabolical 2 tight end offense, you know, 10 years ago. Could you do, why not 3? Why not 3, Tom? 13 personnel.
Right.
Is that what we're all going to be saying next year? I think this
week.
Just
start rototilling those ends. Vidarian can bring the Vidarian back.
Let me give you a couple draft tidbits that I've gleaned this week. Talking to Doug Marrone. Doug Marrone talking about arm length. He's another one of these coaches who says, you know, you can tell me how long your arms are. Show me how you use your length. I feel like when it comes to Will Campbell and his arm length, the Patriots are going to consider it. They're going to think about it. It's not that they don't care about it, but they're going to look at the rest of what he brings to the table, and they're really going to like it. So you have another voice heard from in New England who says arm length, bah. As far as Armand Membu goes and flipping a tackle from one side to the other, thought it was really interesting. I asked him, have you ever had any experience with this? How hard is it? He had someone by the name of Jamal Brown in 2006 with the Saints, and he was a right tackle when he got there and was coaching with Sean Payton in 2006. So his rookie year, 2005, right tackle. 2006, they get there, they flip him to left tackle. He wins first team All-Pro, Tom. And so Moreau,
I thought I remember the guy's name.
Yeah, that's a wild story in terms of, just how good he was as soon as he did it. And so Marone was like, hey, that was pretty cool to be a part of. So I would not rule out Armand Membu. And then we were talking about this a little bit right before we started recording, but just one more name at the top of the draft that we talk about a lot, obviously, is Travis Hunter. And as we're recording this, the Colorado Showcase, a.k.a. Pro Day, is happening, and Travis Hunter's running routes for Shedeur Sanders. And Deion Sanders said in a press conference that one of his guys, either Hunter or Sanders, is going to the Browns. He feels very confidently about that. He was asked a question about Jimmy Haslam, who's at the showcase, and he said, one of my guys is going to be there. I ask you, Tom, do you feel like either way that could be good news for the Patriots? Because if Shedeur Sanders goes to the Browns at 2, that's tremendous for the Patriots. That means either Hunter or Abdul Carter are definitely getting to number 4. Even if Hunter goes to the Browns, it's not ideal. I think a lot of Patriots fans would love for Travis Hunter to end up in New England. But if Hunter goes 2, does Carter maybe get to the Patriots at 4? Because the Giants are at 3. A, they need a quarterback, so maybe they feel like they'd have to take Shedeur Sanders. But B, they have the ability to take Abdul Carter, but they've already made massive investments at that position. They took Kayvon Thibodeau at number 5 overall a couple years ago.
Yep.
He's really good. And now they're paying Brian Burns almost $30 million a year. Would they add Abdul Carter to that mix? They could. There's no question they could.
Yeah, they could.
But what do you think?
The quarterback buys them more time, Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll. And that could be a factor. Now, I can't imagine Joe Schoen is still working in the position that he's in, given what we watched in Hard Knocks last year, where John Mara just said, I'll be sick to my stomach. No, yeah, you will. Anyway, so the best way for them to reboot would be to take, hey, Shedeur Sanders is a fantastic player. He's Daniel Jones plus, and we're really going to have a time with him. And yeah, I could see that happening. So if Carter is sitting there at 4, that means Harold Landry becomes the third pass rusher. It might take a little time for Abdul Carter to get it, but Keon White, Christian Barmore, Milton Williams, Abdul Carter, it's daunting. It's daunting. And I like the fact that Terrell Williams, who we did not speak to this week, but will soon, seems to be a pretty captivating and compelling figure. So he needs to tap into some really talented, but seemingly disillusioned players, Keon White being the primary one. As he talked last year, we'll have to see what I do going forward, whether I'm going to be here or not. He's contractually obligated, but anybody can kick and scream and say, I want to go someplace else. So if you end up with Abdul Carter at 4, you kind of have to take him. Even if he might be a little bit of a guy who loves Abdul Carter, which is what I've heard indicated. I still like Tyler Warren. I still think that they should probably, first things first, try to move down and add picks. Who wants Abdul here? Anybody? Anybody want Shedeur here? We heard 4. What do I hear? Nothing? You want to send us Joe Milton back? All right.
You'd be selling the pick. Would you be selling Abdul Carter if he was there?
Yeah, with a wicked high price tag. You guys want to come up and get this guy? What do you got? No, we're drafting 6th, and we'll give you next year's first round pick too. We're the Jets, which isn't going to happen, but
6 is the Raiders. But you're right. I guess you have to be open to it. They're just so devoid, Tom, of high end talent that it would be really hard.
No, you're right.
You'd have to make it. You'd have to make it.
Does
so
the high end
enticing.
talent? No, I mean you bookend Abdul Carter and Keon White with Christian Barmore and Milton Williams and Bobby Spillane, of course. And the next thing you know, people don't know whether to poop or go blind.
Just really quick,
So,
can I give you one really quick Keon White line from today? I was down at Gillette talking to assistant coaches, defensive coaches. Patriots' new outside linebackers coach, Mike Smith. He says, I'm really excited about Keon. Love the way he plays. You can tell football means something to him when you talk to him. He's a serious guy, meaner than a rattlesnake. I like that line. He said Keon White is meaner than a rattlesnake. So
yeah, he's just not here for the grabassery. Let's wrap it up with a little conversation about the Patriots Hall of Fame. We spent time over there on Thursday with our annual Hall of Fame meeting. Last year we didn't have that because Tom Brady got whooshed in by ownership. Now Bill Parcells has been whooshed in as a contributor, but we spent time talking about the individuals who will be, and we talked about a lot of individuals. It was a lengthy meeting, but the way the operation goes is each of the 20 or so Hall of Fame voters who are in those meetings, and includes Ernie Adams and Ivan Fears and Andre Tippett and older writers like Ron Borges and Mark Farinella, Joe Amorosino, Butch Stearns from the TV side of things, and Karen, of course, Garigian is there, and Phil and I are both there. But long and short of it is, at the end of all the conversation, we select 3 individuals and we rank them as our first recommendation. That guy gets 5 points. Second recommendation, that guy gets 3 points. And the final recommendation, that guy gets 1. Stacey James will add up all the numbers and he'll present to you, fans, the 3 nominees. And that will happen just before the draft, I believe, or right around the draft. You guys can vote for that because you'll be the ones who end up selecting. We just give to you the options as we see fit. One of the interesting conversations is the fact that very popular recent players, namely Julian Edelman, is up for eligibility beginning this year. Julian Edelman didn't go to any Pro Bowls. He didn't go to any, he was never named All-Pro. Julian Edelman was the second all-time playoff leading receiver when he retired. He at one time had the highest punt return average in NFL history at 15.5. He helped win them 3 Super Bowls. He was a Super Bowl MVP. Very little argument that a guy who played defense, offense, and contributed in the biggest games the way he did and never left the Patriots and was basically their entire offense during different junctures doesn't deserve to be in the Patriots Hall of Fame. So too, though, does Logan Mankins, who was an All-Pro and a Pro Bowler annually. Didn't win any Super Bowls, sadly. And then finally, Adam Vinatieri from 95 to 06. He was here. He won 3 Super Bowls for the Patriots with kicks, some of the most memorable plays in NFL history. He obviously deserves to be in not just the Patriots Hall of Fame, but the Pro Football Hall of Fame. The interesting thing that has to be weighed with Adam Vinatieri is, as we talked yesterday, there was a lot of conversation about the massive number of feats that Adam Vinatieri realized over his 22, 3, 4-year career. He was with the Patriots from 95 through 2005. A lot of the things were amassed elsewhere. Doesn't diminish his candidacy for the layup that should be the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And it doesn't diminish the fact that he deserves to be the number 1 guy on this list, in my estimation. And that's how I did it. But I look at this and I think there's trepidation that people won't remember Adam Vinatieri or won't appreciate Logan Mankins. So all the heathen masses out there with their pink hats, they're just going to vote for cute Julian and they're going to forget what Adam Vinatieri did. It's good. It's good. Some Gil Santos for you. Phil?
That was pretty good.
What do you want to add to the conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is interesting, and I'm sure different halls of fame deal with this to different degrees, but I would say that the fans have done a really good job in terms of determining who the inductees should be when they're presented with the 3 finalists. Everyone that is in is a deserving person, and that will be the case again this year because whoever is in the top 3, and I think there are 4 players who would be in most people's top 3. They're all very deserving. I know.
I didn't mention somebody else. Who is it, Phil?
Well, Wes
Vinatieri,
Welker is somebody who,
and Welker, yes,
deserves to be in the conversation for sure. He was, we're not going to talk about the specifics of how others in the room might have been leaning, but we can share our own if we want to, our own ballots. And mine was this year was Adam Vinatieri was my 1 slot for 5 points. Julian Edelman was my 2 slot for 3 points, and Logan Mankins was my 3rd. So I left Wes Welker off, which is, that's a tough one because he obviously deserves to be in. I just would have the other 3 ahead of him at this point. And it's
what happens when your team's the most successful dynasty in NFL history. Period.
It's a good problem to have for somebody who's putting these together, to have more qualified candidates rather than less. And so I'm sure Welker will get in eventually if Edelman gets in this year because he is as popular as he is. Vinatieri will certainly get in eventually. There is a little bit of a logjam, Tom, potentially. Rob Gronkowski is going to be eligible soon. Bill Belichick is going to be obviously going in soon. But I think Adam Vinatieri is not going to have to wait much longer than maybe after those 2 guys in Edelman. If that's how I had to predict it, that's how I would predict it.
What do you think they should do with Bill? Like, still perhaps wanting to return to the NFL. He's 72. You have to do a 5-year waiting period. If he retires, just the same thing you did with Tom, just waive the 5-year deal and just done. He's in. But it's going to be such a cringe fest when that comes to realization.
Yeah. Do you think?
Yeah, I'm so happy.
Is there any chance he wants to delay it? Yeah, I'd love to, but I got to be on the recruiting trail, and I already hit BC High and St. Sebastian's. So.
Yeah, just let it out there that, just make them chase.
Just to give it a little more time to breathe. Yeah.
So that people get up in arms. Hey, screw with Bill again. Hey, screw with Bill.
I don't know. I honestly don't know how he would handle that, but he's going to get it. He's obviously going to get in one way or the other very soon. So
yeah, he built the damn thing. Listen, everyone, we trust you. I thought it was a little bit insane, to be honest, the trepidation of about allowing the unwashed masses to vote. That's not what was going on, but it just, they're going to screw it up out there. I'm like, so? I mean, like,
but that's not screwing it up.
This is America in 2025, though. This is America in 2025. Just trying. They're not going to alter anything, believe me, Stacey Jade. But, just if you don't like the way it is, figure out, is there a way that we can avoid allowing the unwashed masses to vote on this thing? Anyway, Phil, anything to add there?
I'm gleaning that you like to use the term unwashed masses.
Yeah. It's Friday afternoon. It's 3:51. I'm sure the Skull Crusher or Adam Jay-Z or Casey Keene would really love to put a cork in this thing. So let's put a cork in it, and we'll talk to you folks next week. Draft less than 3 weeks away. Bye.